my dear unknown friends. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Ignatus Amicus. Happy to see. Oh, I've been having some. There was an update to OBS, and so now they're just like it's gone and undid a bunch of stuff that I had saved on here. So bear with me as I get everything. There we go. Nope. Looks like that's not going to happen. Oh well. I at least have the chat up, so that's helpful. Now, I don't think that I'm going to be able to type anything in it, so that's fine. All right. Well, the thumbnail and the title should be pretty self-explanatory about the subject for today. And just to kind of for those of you who don't know, or who haven't seen the last movie deep dive that I did, I think it was about a year ago. I did one on Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, just because I thought some of the themes or thematic elements in it were really pertinent to a lot of the stuff that that we cover that I cover on this channel. And and since then, I have yet to really see many films that also touch upon our subject matter. I will say, just as like a little teaser, that I have been contemplating doing one of these videos on Dune, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting for them to finish, at least, get through. Just wait for Dune Messiah to release this December, and then I'll do sort of like a 3-movie deep dive on some of the philosophical connotations and what they mean for us, and how we can see the patterns in it playing out in society at large today, and then of course to talk about what's pertinent for us as aspiring Sophiurgists, or those who wish to work out God's wisdom and manifest his will in reality to even the miraculous degree, if he wills it. So so it's not going to be very often that I do videos like this, and after stewing, just a quick little backstory. I actually was not aware of the Backrooms, because I was never really on 4chan or anything like that. Never really found the places on the internet that talk about things like that. I knew through my younger siblings, who are very much Gen Z. I was made aware of liminal horror as like a generic genre, a generic internet genre, through some shorts and things that some like short form video that they had shown me, and it was very interesting. But of course, the idea is not new, in that this uneasiness with liminal spaces. There's some studies where they've, I think it was Harvard Medical. So someone did some interesting research and found that there are centers in the brain that that are triggered or activated when you pass through a doorway. And of course, they don't have necessarily an explanation for that, and that's where anthropology, I guess, comes in, and anthropological psychology or whatever. But ultimately, these ideas of liminal spaces and their potential for danger is a very, very, very old, very ancient idea that was held by many cultures across the entire world. Cultures that never had any interaction with each other. And no, the answer as to why they seem to all reach a fairly similar conclusion is not because of aliens. It's because it's a deep memory that is ingrained in us, going all the way back to Noah and his sons, and then through them back before the deluge. These are incredibly old memories, incredibly old conceptions, and it's in a way it's that by definition makes it, I guess, perennial. So, and then some cultures though did have some derivation or variance with which these spaces manifest themselves, what's in them, what happens to you when you're in them. But so, sort of the basic premises of all these was very much shared a sort of a fundamental assumption about such places. And so the Backrooms is just a modern Backrooms is a modern rendition of the same, colored by parts of like covered in some sense by nostalgia, but also um, but also related to things about more like the dark side of nostalgia, the things that we uh, the bad things that we chose not to remember about in the case of the Backrooms, the 90s, as well as well, we'll get into it because I have a slightly unique take that I have not come across yet in all the videos that I've watched trying to explain the Backrooms, either before or after the premiere of the film, and we'll get into that. Before we do that, I want to offer an update. This is an update in regards to the St. Benedict medal research that I've been doing. I have, as I shared last week, I did receive an email from the what is it, the Landstred archives in Bavaria, which is sort of encompasses Munich, what is it, Munich, Nuremberg, and areas in and around Deggendorf, where the monastery of Metten is in the vicinity of. And they weren't able to find anything, but they did give me an indication of something that related to the witch trial that Dom Prosper Garanger cites as the inciting incident prompting the monks to search their monastery. And so they suggested that I reach out to, there were two places they suggested I reach out to. The one seemed to be a little more promising, and it was a more broad, it's a broader Bavarian archive um, that has offices in Straubing. And apparently there is a witch trial from about 1647 or 1644, depending on the accounts, that took place in Straubing rather than Natternberg, which is where um, Garanger originally places this witch trial. Now, with that being said, and I'm going to be sort of cross-examining the actual sources that and citations that were sent to me, but they did a kindness in summarizing some of the information that they had found in their cursory glance at all this material. That seems to suggest that Garanger was not doing his due diligence, and the implications of this lack of information, or you could also call it this misinterpretation of, well, maybe not a misinterpretation, but we'll just say Garanger played fast and loose with the facts. So this actually works better towards my thesis about the Benedict medal and its implications for a true, faithful practice of amulet making that has its origins in Germany, in Christian Germany, amongst Christians, that culminated into the St. Benedict medal as we know it, with all of its miraculous effects that have been documented. So yeah, there's some really fascinating stuff there. And then I received a reply also from Father Michael over at Metten Monastery. He's one of the archivists there. And he sadly was not able to confirm any instances of this original ancient mural. He stated to me in his email that wherever they may have been, there was a quote-unquote restoration about 40 years ago of where these murals supposedly where these murals occurred. And he sent me an image of the circa 1980s marble placards that were put in their place. Now, put in there, that these modern renditions put in the place of the murals is what I think is implied in the way that Father Michael phrases his email. But that's just my interpretation of his email. If we stick to just if we remain to a strict interpretation, I would say that it seems as if whatever murals may have been there at Metten since its founding, it seems that they have been lost to time and are probably under layers of paint or plaster, which is deeply regrettable. And unfortunately, also, according to Father Michael, there were no photographs ever taken of the original murals, from what he can find. Now, the Bavarian Archive in Straubing also, I had also posed to them, asking them if maybe they happened to have any photographs or any documentation related to the actual murals in question. given that they also are an archive for artwork in addition to text documents and other artifacts. And they were able to confirm that based on their current search, most recent search, they were not able to find any photographs in their archives of these murals from Metin. So stay tuned, because now that I have all this information, there might be one more source that I need to take a look at, and I am going to have to travel a little to find it, because it's over in Blacksburg, Virginia, at one of the libraries in Virginia Tech. So I have to go and find this book, just to cross-reference some of the sources that were sent to me by the archive with the bibliography and citations in this book, just to have at least one English let's see. I feel that this works. Having some kind of touch point in English that references these German sources that I have, I think will be very helpful. So that's where things are with the Benedict Metal research. It has taken the turn that I suspected it was going to. I was admittedly very hopeful that there would actually be at least something to corroborate this witch trial. But with the information that was sent to me, I can confirm that the witch trial in question in 1647 is actually just it is a pious legend. There are no court documents that exist to corroborate it ever having occurred. And also there are multiple versions of the same witch trial. The one does place it in Natternberg, another places it in Straubing, and I believe I saw another instance where it places it somewhere else. All, again, within the vicinity of at least a 30-mile radius of Metin Monastery. So this is very, very interesting stuff. And once I have all this stuff compiled and reviewed, I'm gonna finish the essay, and I'll have it up over at my Substack, which brings us to some housekeeping. This stream, as with all the other streams and everything that I do on the internet, both here and elsewhere, is viewer and reader supported. One of the ways that you are able to support everything that I do here on YouTube and over on Substack is you can either go to Buy Me a Coffee. This is my tip jar. So if you don't want to support on a monthly basis over on Substack and you just want to chip in a few dollars here, a few dollars there, this is the link, which is in the description below, that you can go and chip in. If chip in a quarter, chip in a buck, whatever you can. In one of my emails to the monastery, I mentioned that I'd be happy to rummage up some form of donation with any of the tips that I receive. And so they at least did their diligence and had a look about for me. So I would love to try to compensate them So if you do want to send any tips through Buy Me a Coffee, just know that they will go towards a donation to the Metin Monastery. In addition to the tip jar, you're able to go here to, this is the Substack. Link for it is in the description below. I know it's a little slow getting the next essay out to you all, but I want to make sure that I've done my diligence. I don't want to rush these things because I feel, for those of you who don't know, there is a contingent of sedivacantists and other content creators of a more traditional Catholic bent on Substack who never fail to drop a post nearly every day, or at least every other day. And someone took the time to put those pieces into a program that supposedly is able to determine if something has been written by AI. Now, the person who ran these things through this program, I believe themselves are a teacher, so I would imagine that this tool has some semblance of believability. And they found that a large number of these essays by this one particular account, I think his name is Chris Jackson, that a lot of his content seems to be, according to whatever the metric is, seems to be AI generated, which is a no-go. We can't be doing this as Catholics. We can't be doing this. And I'm even saying this even before Pope Leo drops an encyclical about AI. You know, the Pope first of all, the Pope shouldn't have to drop an encyclical about AI. It should have already been within our daily discernment that we have to keep our wits about us and do things authentically. Unfortunately, when people become so consumed with trying to prove their point on the internet, they lose that wherewithal and subject themselves to the service of something that they do not understand, which, if you read Meditations on the Tarot by Valentin Tomberg, what does he call that? What is it that he calls a person who becomes an instrument of forces, of unconscious forces that they do not understand or don't identify? He calls them sorcerers. So yeah, anyone who utilizes large language models in the sense of content creation or generation or iteration, they are basically performing sorcery. And last I remember, sorcery is condemned by the Catholic Church. So yeah, there's that. And but anyhow, my essays are not AI generated. I sit down and painstakingly write these suckers, and I'm not one of those people who takes very lightly to the idea of just vomiting onto a page and then going back with a fine-tooth comb. That works for maybe fiction. That works for commercial fiction. For this type of subject matter, it doesn't work so well. And so as I'm typing these out, like I'll type a paragraph, and then I'll read the previous paragraph, then read the fresh paragraph, and then does it, I look, does it flow? Is it communicating what it is that I'm trying to communicate? and then I'll make a few minor adjustments, and then after doing a few minor adjustments as I'm writing it, then I'll pause, I'll go back from the top and read the whole thing through out loud, making any adjustments as needed before I ever publish it. So know that these essays do come straight from my noggin through my fingertips. And so the Benedict Medal essay will be one of those, which is why the essays don't come, like, there's not always going to be one every month. It's, however long it takes to write the next piece is when the next piece goes up. Which is one of the reasons why I do this weekly live stream here on YouTube, is just to maintain interaction with everybody, to maintain interaction with the readers, with the viewers, and just to let them, just to be transparent about everything that's happening. That's why I do that's why I do this segment of house cleaning. It's just to kind of keep you guys up to date. So for those of you who don't know, I write this Substack, the Sophiurgist, Journal for the Catholic Wisdom Worker. Give you a little sort of a current working definition of Sophiurgy, the science and art of facilitating change to occur in conformity with the will of God. And so aside from the Buy Me a Coffee, which we already talked about, the other ways you can support me are by you can subscribe for free. Subscribing for free allows you to read, you can read every article. I don't intend on putting like a hard cap on, like, if a post is so many months old that it goes behind a paywall. I'm not going to do that. Read only will be free and available to anyone. So you can subscribe for free to read everything for free, but it's read only. However, if you would love to have an audio version that you can listen to in the car or while you're working out, the monthly or annual tier is where it's at. So for $5 a month or $50 a year, in addition to being able to read every post, which you would have gotten anyway, you get audio versions, narrated and recorded by moi. So the voice you hear is my voice, not some AI clone. I record all of my audio versions right over there. Right over there. I've got my microphone, I've got my mixer, I've got, at some point I'm gonna increase the production quality of the narrated versions. Maybe put like a little audio bumper of some kind of like little theme song that I'll write myself and record myself for you all. Just again, to add value. I want to add value for as a thank you for your support. So yeah, you get audio versions of everything. Then you also gain access to personal correspondence. You can write to me via snail mail, and I will reply by hand or typewritten letters. I keep seeming to postpone this opening a PO box, but unfortunately, they are a lot more expensive than I thought that they were going to be. So right now I'm doing a cost benefit analysis on what tier to rent out PO box, just because, with all things I have to budget, and so far right now there's only 2 paid subscribers, and I thank them both. Shout out to Danielle and Pictoris Lore, who have subscribed since before last week's video. And but I'm gonna be I promise I'm gonna bite the bullet this week. Before this week is out, there will be a PO box address for paid subscribers. If you would like to write, it's by snail mail, have something physical and tangible that you can read, that was made by a human's hand, and sent to you by a human's hand, so that you know that I'm a real person and not just some robot on the internet. Um, that's another benefit of being a monthly or annual paid subscriber at Substack. You also will receive at the end of the year a print edition of the year's essays. So at at the beginning of next year, there will be a print edition of all the essays from 2026. We talked about buying me a coffee. There's a founders tier. If you want to be the Medici to my Ficino, this is the tier for you. You can become a substantial patron through this tier and help fund the work done at the Suffragist. Your contribution goes a long way and helps fund research materials. Joining this tier also avails you of all the benefits of a regular paid subscription, but with the added bonus of participating in a monthly research session exclusive to Societas members. So to join the Societas Sophiergica, the founders tier, it's $150 a year. I know that that's outside of some people's wheelhouse, but for any and all who who want to contribute maybe a little bit more on an annual basis, who think that this work is fruitful and important, I've made the founders tier flexible. So you can pay anything between $50 and $150, whatever works for you. Minimum requirement for being a participant of the monthly research sessions is ideally, but not a hard and fast rule, a professed member of an apostolic church, such as Catholicism, Orthodoxy, Coptic Christianity, Armenian Orthodoxy, the work. What if you have bishops who can trace apostolic succession to the 12 apostles, and if you have a liturgical tradition that incorporates a belief in the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist, then you'll get the most out of participating in that monthly research session. If you don't, it might be a little difficult for you, and you might think that you're wasting your money. So why waste the money? So yes, that's the Substack, and with that, we will go ahead and we'll take a quick look at chat before we dive in. All right, Jacobite Wiseman chiming in right before I started streaming. Is like, this should be interesting. I hope it is. Jason B90 says the Backrooms is an allegory for society collectively waking up to the existence of the spiritual realm after scientism has denied it for so long, and this spiritual realm contains more than just angels. We'll see. We'll as with any ambiguous internet lore, it is so ambiguous it's open to just about any interpretation. And I know that the Backrooms is one such piece of internet lore and mythology that is incredibly saturated with all kinds of interpretations of what it means, through all kinds of different frames, such as some people think of it as like hard science fiction and try to approach it from that sort of a lens. Others do interpret it more allegorically. I know Jay Dyer, the orthobro extraordinaire, the Christian Orthodox version of Alex Jones, as I like to call him. He's done his take on it, which wasn't a bad take. It's a lot of it seems to ring true, but of course, as with all things Jay Dyer and Alex Jones, it's all a cult. It's all the evil occultists in the Hollywood trying to tell you things, and there are some movies where that is probably the case. I'm not gonna poo-poo that right off the bat, but sometimes they take it to an absurd degree, which is against the virtue of prudence and temperance. So there's that. But also it harbors demons, hence the monsters in the Backrooms. Yes, well, okay. Again, this heavily depends upon which canon of the Backrooms, because there's multiple different canons. There's the video game canon, which takes it to a ridiculously absurd degree. Then there's just your generic algorithmically generated slop. Well, algorithmically generated in that people are chasing they're chasing the algorithm, and so they come up with a bunch of random stuff. And then some of it's just, probably like 12-year-olds being really creative and projecting their own fears and things onto it. So, so I would say since this is based off of going off the movie, um, this video is going to restrain itself to Kane Parsons' interpretation of the Backrooms lore, which I think is, given that he has demonstrated a tremendously mature degree of personal and professional discernment when it comes to his access to the resources at Hollywood's disposal. The fact that he turned down the initial offers that he was given when he came out with his first video is slightly is quite impressive, and so it just has me looking forward to what he's going to do in the future. I think he's probably going to be far more mind bending of a director than Christopher Nolan or David Lynch combined. So we will see. We'll see. But his version of the Backrooms is the version that I'm going to go with. And we're not going to necessarily limit ourselves to just the A24 production. We're also going to sort of draw upon Kane's larger body of work that he's done, which I have watched all three, and I think it's like 3 hours 20 minutes worth of original Backrooms YouTube content that he has made, that he has compiled into a playlist. It definitely is the best that analog horror has to offer. And it does found footage probably better than most found footage movies I've seen, and that's even including the Blair Witch Project. And yes, I am throwing a little bit of shade at the Blair Witch Project. There's a few really cool shots in that movie, but that's about it. Let's see what else. Let's see. Jacobite Wiseman chiming in saying there are things in this world. Oh, okay. Well, so as it happens, as you all are probably used to, I try to keep a little stack of some source material from which to draw upon in case I need to reference something. And so here beside me, I have The Vertical Ascent by Wolfgang Smith, which will become pertinent in a little bit. But to the quote that trying to find it. Trying to remember, is it in the foreword? Is it in the preface? There is an instance where he drops that quote, actually, Jacobite. He throws that quote in here somewhere. Oh, I promise I will find it. Because it's too good to pass up. And plus it would be helpful if we have the actual quote. Oh, please. Please, please, please. The problem with some of these books by Wolfgang is that not all of the books has a bibliography. There is an index of names. Heraclitus is not the name that we're looking for. Necessarily, at least yet. Please bear with me, my friends. I know it's here somewhere. I've been flipping through this book all day, just kind of refreshing my memory of the chapters that I have read. But it doesn't seem like I'm striking any gold today, unfortunately, my friends. Oh, that's such a shame. But yeah, it's like there are things in this world that are only dreamt of in your philosophies, Horatio, which say I'm drawing a blank on where that's from. I remember reading it elsewhere. Ah, here it is. Here it is. I found it. Found it. Yeah. So, more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Which, memory serves me, I want to say that's a quote from Shakespeare. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, good, really good quote there, and it's funny that you happened to drop that quote. Let's see. All right, 5150 show says watching live from New Zealand. Oh, thanks for joining. Hamlet, yes, thank you. Yes, gosh, it's been ages. It's been ages since I've read Hamlet, so that's why it's not as fresh in my memory. Jacobite asks, no spoilers, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Jacobite, but you've chosen the wrong video to watch. We are going to be touching on some spoilers because it is truly unavoidable. I have to say, to really, like, if we're going to talk about the entire body of Backrooms lore from Kane Pixels or from Kane Parsons, you have to talk about everything, and that you have to take into consideration everything, including the film that was released. So, Astral Counterpoint says postmodernity explains the Backrooms. At least as it concerns my take, yeah, you're close. You're definitely close. Okay, so why am I flashing Wolfgang Smith around? Okay, well, it's so if you look at the thumbnail to the live stream, you'll notice a symbol that I threw in the bottom corner. That symbol is a representation of the tripartite cosmos. Smith calls it the cosmological icon, or the icon of the cosmos. And he refers to it in many places, not just this book, but other of his books, where he treats upon, where he touches on vertical causality. He calls it the most basic geometric form. The most basic and the most accurate, he says. And so, just as God has a Trinitarian form, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, three distinct persons, despite sharing one united or unific essence, the cosmos likewise has three aspects. As above, so below. And then there's yet another reflection, which is interesting, which falls in line with this idea of threeness, um, where us, the imago Dei, being created in the image and likeness of God, this is we are a reflection. Not we're created in the image and likeness of God, but we also we are the pinnacle, the apex, and the consummatory reflection of the cosmos. Again, playing into the notion of as above, so below. And so there's there's a threeness to everything. There's a Trinitarian aspect to the cosmos, just as there's a Trinitarian aspect to us. We have a mind or spirit, we have a soul, and we have a body. So we have an animus, spiritus, and corpus. And so Wolfgang, in this book and elsewhere in other essays and articles that he's written, talks about the tripartite nature of the cosmos, and he has it sort of compartmentalized into three realms, or three topoi, I guess you could say. You have the spiritual, the intermediary, and the corporeal. The spiritual, he also sometimes will call the spiritual realm. He also occasionally calls it a eternity. So it's not strictly speaking eternity, but because for the cosmos to have true eternity as one of its aspects would be to equivocate the supernatural with the natural, or to confuse the natural with the supernatural, which would be a philosophically untenable, but also is contrary to the deposit of the faith, the traditions of the church and scripture. So that's why he distinguishes it as eternity. Now, this is where I would point you all to my profile pic, my little emblem that I have currently as my profile picture, everywhere that I'm at, nearly everywhere that I'm at on the internet. And it's basically the top half, you have depicted the Trinity, Pater, Filius, Spiritus Sanctus. All right, and Filius is enlarged, and it's intersecting with Mater, the mother. So it's mother. It's sort of like the sub Trinitarian identity that is possessed in that is composed of the person of Mary. So she is mother, daughter, and holy spouse. And so in this way, the Blessed Virgin reflects the Trinity. And also, she bears Christ within her. And so he obtains his physical, corporeal existence by her flesh, and then that's why the two circles create this Venn diagram, where in the center you have two pentacles that are woven with each other to create a dodecagram or a decagram. The number 10 is, according to Saint Anatolius of Laodicea, he says 10 is the number of completion. We don't necessarily need to have recourse to Jewish Kabbalah to know that, because just about any ancient Greek philosopher could tell you that 10 is the number of completion. It's just helpful to have, a saint of the church who was also a bishop and not a heretic, confirm this for us. So Saint Anatolius of Laodicea says 10 is the number of completion. he also says that the number 5 is the number representing mediation. And so you have Christ is the mediator between us and the Father, and then Mary acts as a mediatrix of grace, right? Because she is full of grace, and by full of grace, full of all grace. And why is she full of all grace? Because she bore Christ within her, right? In order to do that, she needed the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, which is God, which is where all grace comes from, right? So you have the perfect mediator, Christ, represented as the red pentacle, and you have Mary as the subordinate mediator or mediatrix, as the black pentagram woven together, and this comes from one of the essays in volume 1 of Mariology, or sorry, volume 2 of Mariology, the blue one there, where the theologian, in discussing first principles of Mariology, places Mary in the he places Mary within the hypostatic order. And so my diagram is the emblem of the channel is a diagram representing the hypostatic order and the union between Mary and Christ, and then everything that pertains, like it's an emblem that also has connotations with everything that's implied by the incarnation. So Ave Eternity, getting back to Wolfgang's cosmic icon, in Ave Eternity we have it's not exactly eternity, it's pretty close. It's its reflection in the cosmos. And it could be argued that this might be the gateway through which the saints are able to interact with us from heaven, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, that what could be said is like you could think of it as the gate. It's the gate to heaven, because what's on the other side of Ave Eternity? Well, what does whatever it is that Ave Eternity reflects? Is it then a gateway to? These are questions that unfortunately are left unresolved. As far as I am aware, I don't know if anyone has taken up Wolfgang's torch since he has passed away. May his soul rest in peace. But it may, just on speculation, without any hard ontology to give you, it could be argued that that Ave Eternity for the cosmos is potentially a place that is occupied by the Blessed Virgin herself. And so the intermediary world, this is not necessarily a mixture of corporeality and Ave Eternality, but it's this is sort of the air that spirits inhabit, fly around in. The angels that blow at the four corners of the world, this would be where they might occupy. And the thing that distinguishes the intermediary realm with the corporeal realm is that this intermediary realm, represented by the straight line connecting the circumference with the center, there is no there's time. What is it? There's no space, but there's time. And then Ave Eternity has neither space nor time. But it's not a supernatural realm. It is a spiritual realm, as he says. Now, what was it that was the impetus behind Wolfgang Smith to come up with all this stuff? And this is where we start to touch on the relationship with the Backrooms. So in the vast body of Wolfgang's work, he's always going on and on about how science, especially quantum physics, as the most egregious example, and then all the other sciences kind of suffer from the issues that quantum physics has. Because when we're dealing with quantum physics, we're effectively dealing with materialistic first principles. All right. And so all the other sciences suffer from whatever quantum mechanics suffers from. And Wolfgang accurately diagnosed one of the issues that quantum physics has, and that all science has, which has its origins in what's called the measurement problem, which is a little heady. I don't want to get too bogged down into the weeds with it, but suffice it to say that there's a philosophical issue at play when it comes to the question of measurement. And it's like this ontological chasm that quantum science and that science across the board today just can't seem to cross, because they're not willing to concede certain philosophical ground. And so long as they refuse to concede philosophical ground, they're stuck. And so everything that quantum mechanics and quantum physics has been doing, which Wolfgang talks about, is effectively them just creating for themselves circular arguments. It's like they keep creating these circular arguments that manifests that manifest themselves into true absurdity, and it all happens right at the edge that they refuse to cross, at the threshold they refuse to cross. And so one of the ways in which Wolfgang claims that he solves the measurement problem is by distinguishing between the physical and the corporeal. The corporeal is what is real, because everything that is corporeal participates in substance, and there's a lot of Thomistic theology and ontology that goes on, that is also informed by Platonic metaphysics in a lot of Wolfgang's work. And just the sheer fact, he was an incredibly brilliant man. In addition to, I mean, like, I can just read, for those of you who don't know, this is the man, Wolfgang Smith. Graduated from Cornell at 18 with majors in physics, mathematics, and philosophy. He subsequently contributed a theoretical solution to the re-entry problem for spaceflight. After taking his doctorate in mathematics at Columbia, he served for 30 years as professor of mathematics at MIT, UCLA, and Oregon State University. He then devoted himself to correcting the fallacies of scientific belief, focusing on foundational problems pertaining to quantum theory and visual perception by way of the traditional tripartite cosmology. And there's the Philos Sophia Initiative Foundation's documentary on his life and work. The End of Quantum Reality is now available on disc and digital platforms worldwide. I've watched it. It's basically just a hagiography while he was still alive of what he was up to, and God bless them for doing it, because I don't think anyone's written a biography. I don't think he wrote an autobiography. But anyhow, the point being, this guy is like really smart, and he's a traditionalist leaning Catholic. He has a lot of problems with Vatican II. He has a lot of problems with the new Mass, and so he's only ever really attended the Latin Mass. So I have tremendous respect for him in that regard. And I pray someday that his insights and everything will contribute to the restoration of the medieval apprehension of reality, the apprehension of reality that was held by Christendom, which can be argued should have been what we stuck to, because it was informed by Christ. So, so in his attempt to solve the measurement problem, he distinguishes between corporeality and physicality. And it boils down to this question of, does something have substantial form? Does it have substance? Does it have essence? And so he's also distinguishing that whatever it is that science claims it's observing is nothing more than it's just a hylomorphic. It's a hylomorphic rather than an it's an anthroposophic mode or frame of observation. Because one of the things that he points out is that in science there's no the scientist, because he's not willing to make Thomistic concessions on ontology, that the scientist is incapable of understanding the lengths to which they are affecting what it is that they're observing. Now, a common rebuttal to this is, it's like, oh, they're not talking about like the scientist actually looking at the thing. They're talking about the instrument that's doing the measuring. Well, Wolfgang Smith took that, like, had that in consideration when he made his critique. And he basically criticizes that objection by saying, who made the device that measures? The only reason that there's a device to measure anything is by the fact that a human mind wrought the instrument's existence to begin with. So, so there's no escaping vertical causality, and there's no escaping the way in which we as human beings are able to participate in that vertical causation. Now, where all of this touches on this idea of the backrooms, and I would say specifically in terms of the film and the body of work from Kane Parsons, has to do with, he calls it the subcorporeal. Wolfgang Smith refers to, in describing this cosmic icon, all right? So you have the center, which is A of eternity. You have the line connecting the center with the circumference being the intermediary realm, where there's no space, but there's time. And then you have the circumference, which is the corporeal realm, where there is both space and time. And then he will talk, and then in talking about the ontological issues of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, he often brings up the example of an apple. The apple is the descriptions that we give to an apple are real, but quantum mechanics tells us that the apple is not there. Now, why is this? And it all boils down to Cartesianism, right? The Cartesian bifurcation, where you have res existans and res cogitans. Descartes turned us all schizophrenic, like Dr. Mary's mother in Backrooms. Descartes bifurcated our perception of reality and caused us to doubt the veracity of our own perception that was God, our perception was God given, and it's connected in a holistic way with the way in which we receive information from around us. Okay, but by making a distinction between the way I perceive a thing and the thing as it physically exists, that they are not, Descartes argues they are not the same thing. And so, how do we know what it is then? Well, that's where measurement and the scientific method comes in, and it's just been downhill ever since then. because now we're at a point where the res cogitans is where we have the res existence, which is someone who is biologically male in every way, down to the DNA. But their res cogitans is that, oh, but I'm a woman. Okay? So, and this is just one of the natural end results of the Cartesian bifurcation out of many. And in the realm of the way in which it has affected science is where Wolfgang Smith has done a lot of his work within the last 30 years, 40 years. So we have so in his distinction of the physical and the corporeal, something that is corporeal is that which we are interacting with, that which we perceive, that also has existence. I will admit here, I'm not as thick in the weeds about every little detail in his thought, mainly because my focus of study isn't necessarily science, and he very heavily leans into science and the ontology of science and things of that sort, which aren't things that I normally study. But I do find his angle is important, and so I try to at least read as much as I can that I find pertinent in his writings. There are others who are really good at expounding upon his ideas, and I would encourage you to look up the Facebook group Wolfgangsters, because there are a lot of well-studied people who know his philosophy a lot better than I. With that being said, there is a good chunk of his philosophy that he derives from Jean Barella and Bruno Berard. Now, where do I think this has relevance to the Backrooms? This has relevance to the Backrooms in that this is my take based on what I understand of Wolfgang Smith. So if you look at the Backrooms, if you look at the videos on the YouTube channel that pertain to the tests of the magnetic distortion array that Async creates. Async's the corporation that they discover this dimension. They don't really understand how it ended up that they found it. And Mark Duplass's character, spoilers, Mark Duplass's character, I guess it's not too bad of a spoiler, says something to the effect of this is the greatest discovery in human history, the Backrooms, but admits that they don't know what it is. Kane Parsons has mentioned in interviews that Async found the Backrooms, which just ties into what I said earlier about how this idea of there being liminal spaces and the dread we feel about them, and this sort of inherent deep memory that we have of this concept seems to still be present because it comes up throughout human history across different cultures since the deluge, which is evidence that it is a memory of something that goes back much, much farther. Perhaps this would be an argument that I would have if we want to get real into the weeds. I wonder if perhaps this dread of the liminal has to do with the cherubim with the flaming sword at the gate of Eden. He's at a gate, a threshold. Gates are liminal spaces. They're thresholds from one place to another, and so the dread could be in the attempt to cross through that threshold, and then being stuck in that space would be getting cut down by the angel with the flaming sword. So that's a potential for what the dread associated with liminal spaces might be. It could just be that is the fear of one's demise at the sword of the cherubim at the gate of Eden, wherever that might be. Now, going back to async, going back to the lore, you have async. They create this magnetic distortion array that, because we see a brochure in the movie where Mark Duplass again. He's like, "Oh yeah, we used to make MRI machines, but we don't anymore." So they create this device that distorts the magnetic field, and it distorts it to such an effect that they open this doorway to a dimension that they don't comprehend. It's suggested by Clark, Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, that the Backrooms seems to remember people. It seems to remember things, and that the more it tries to remember, the less it does. And he uses he uses still lifes, these sort of like strange entities that resemble people, but there's like they're like manifestations of echoes of memories of people. Hence why like some of them have like multiple different faces that seem like they're all mashed up. And so when you look at it, they're designed in a way that it looks like the face is vibrating when in reality it's not. And it's just the way that all the different faces have overlapped over each other as the Backrooms, or whatever this place is, attempts to manifest the memory of whoever that person is. As far as where the movie takes place in the timeline of everything, I've seen some suggest that it happens early in the timeline, and that Clark might be one of the first to accidentally end up in the Backrooms after the doorway is officially opened. So, but what do we see here with this? We have we have a number of uh, we have scientists who have sort of reached the limits of their understanding, right? And now they are faced they're faced with something that they cannot comprehend, no matter how much they study it. Um, and so I would my take on the Backrooms as a concept is that the way it's portrayed in Kane Parsons' body of work is that this edge of this ontological edge that scientists refuse to step over, that they keep spinning themselves in circles right at the edge in like a like they keep coming up with all these theories and all these subatomic particles and everything, and it just seems like it gets crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier to the all because they refuse to take that ontological leap that they need to get out of the loop that they've made for themselves. And there's two instances in the film where the characters, both Clark and the psychiatrist Dr. Mary, where they talk about getting stuck in loops. We all have our loops we're stuck into. So the async scientists are in a loop. They're in the same loop that Wolfgang Smith accuses quantum physicists of being in, because they refuse to accept Thomistic ontology. They refuse to accept the necessary ontology to ever be able to make it to the next logical conclusion that science tries to get to. And of course, there's also the issue of science sometimes it's overstepping its bounds, which which is where you get into questions of the existence of God and whether he exists or not, whether we're just random, the absurdity of the theories the philosophical lengths that they have to go to in order to justify everything that they do. And just look at CERN. Look at CERN. CERN is nothing but a bunch of people stuck in a loop, literally and figuratively speaking. And there's some stolen photos that have been leaked on the internet of some of the things that they're doing on the grounds at CERN that make you raise your eyebrows and wonder what the hell they're doing. But there is something to be said about the connection between modern science and uh, practical, personal, or arbitrary magic and sorcery. Between arbitrary magic and sorcery, what is it? Was it Peladan or Papus that Tomberg quotes, saying that occultism today is the exact equivalent of industrial science. That it's almost a one for one. Like there's no philosophical difference between the two because they both rely upon pure human agency, pure human will, arbitrary will to power, Willensmacht, and things like that. So the Backrooms, in my interpretation, is that the Backrooms is the subcorporeal realm that Wolfgang Smith talks about, because he has this he has an equation that he uses to solve the measurement problem, x equals sx. So x represents every corporeal object that exists in the cosmos. xs or sx represents the aspect of that corporeal thing um, that is measurable, that falls within the limited ontology of physics or quantum mechanics. So so the and so Wolfgang's one argument, as far as I can tell, is the things that physicists are studying, are the scientists are studying, are not actually the things themselves. Like, say, the composition, and he uses an apple as an example. You have the apple as it actually is, and then you have whatever the fuck quantum physics says the apple is. Which one is real? The apple as it manifests to you, to your perception, plus to your senses, is the real one, because it's the only version of the apple that has substantial form. The quantum apple is the phantom, is the figment of, is the illusion. There really is a red apple, and then there's whatever quantum mechanics says that apple is. And it spins itself into a tizzy, to describe every tot and tittle of what's happening, which again reaches the absurd. And so the Backrooms is this subcorporeal realm that that is, in a way, again, the representation of that the threshold between the threshold where through which scientists have to get themselves through to the other side of, if they want to free themselves of their insanity. But what happens is, and this is what I think the Backrooms represents. The Backrooms represents scientists being unable to cross the threshold, and instead are obsessed with the threshold. They become obsessed with the liminal space, and which is represented by the fact that it's seemingly infinite. That the Backrooms are seemingly infinite, and that they seem to defy all logic, which again is like at the quantum level, things seem like they don't make sense at all either, do they? Like, the all sense of rationality is out the window. Absurdity becomes the norm, right? Absurdity becomes manifest within the Backrooms, like chairs not being actually sitting on the floor, but seeming like they're sinking into the floor or into the wall. Hallways and doorways that don't make sense. And it all exists as a the wall, the ceiling, the walls, the carpets, and everything. It all has an air of the surgical, of the clinical, of the sterile. Even though in the larger body of work there's like this bacteria. Now, some have theorized that the movie is a prequel to the original video, and a prequel to the other found footage videos. And the reason that they come to that conclusion is because some have theorized that bacteria doesn't start getting remembered until people start going into the back rooms. It's still ultimately inside Kane Parsons' head as to like the full extent. Um, the full extent of the story and how it ends. Um, but so this is all my contention on what the backrooms actually are. That it's the it's their it's a representation of science's refusal to cross the threshold of the ontology they refuse to enter. And so long as they refuse to enter and think that they can apply their will to the cosmos, um, the the more the more dangerous the backrooms will become. Because and one thing that I would point out too is if going off of the YouTube videos, you see when the doorway is established and they walk through it, notice how orderly it is. Like it's incredibly orderly. The you have these um, you have these pillars that all that are perfectly symmetrical, that go on for however many meters, however many hundreds of meters, and at a certain point, eventually, at a certain distance from the doorway, the chaos starts to set in. And then the further on from that you go, the crazier the wacky things are, the more dingy and dilapidated things start to become, um, un, until you get to the point where you enter the layer of life form, whatever the life form is. Some have suggested that the one of the entities that shows up in the movie is, and again, it's a theory as to why the movie might be a prequel, is that this one entity that shows up is not yet, that it turns into the life form from the YouTube videos. That it started off looking like what it does in the movie, and then over time it devolves into this life form that has remembered so much that it actually has forgotten what it originally was supposed to be, because it is now so far removed from what it was a manifestation of. Now, as far as all the character-driven stuff, there's some really interesting there's an interesting dichotomy between the two main characters, that I think are worth talking about. You have Clark. He's a failed architect in a failed marriage with a drinking problem and anger issues and a narcissistic personality, who is stuck running a failing furniture store. Then, and his dream, he wanted to be an architect, but he's for many reasons he seems to externalize the reason for his misery onto everyone else around him except himself, which is one of the things that Dr. Mary, I think it's Mary Klein, Dr. Mary Klein is trying to help him with. Now, Dr. Mary Klein, on the other hand, is someone who has achieved what they had set out to do. They wanted to be psychiatrist to help a psychologist so that they could help people. Mainly, this has to do with her personal history with her mother. She wants to help people and to prevent people from becoming like her mother. So, and so, she supposedly has achieved this. But there's an interesting little parallel that occurs where we see her at some kind of a house party, and she takes a stash of probably some black market opiate or something. She finds someone's bag of stuff, and she takes one, probably because she's still actually struggling with things. So I thought that was a neat little parallel, something that she actually does share with Clark, even if it is on a smaller scale to Clark's implied alcoholism. As I sip, pardon, as I sip on a drink myself, non-alcoholic, of course. So, so I thought that dichotomy between the two characters was a great idea, um, and as well as the dichotomy that they have at the end of the film between each other, where you have Clark, again, spoilers. You have Clark who embraces the insanity. He embraces, excuse me, um, the absurdity, so that he can avoid having to change. And on the other hand, Mary herself, she ends up changed. Like she's been trying to help others change when at the end of the day she ends up being the one who is changed. And the movie leaves it ambiguous at the end, spoilers, as to Mary's fate, because ultimately she survives and is apprehended by Async. And when she asks what's going to happen to her, Mark Duplass says, that's not up for me to decide. And then we just kind of fade out to some some shots of the backrooms and the way in which they have changed. There are some new things there that weren't there prior, or well, there is a suggestion at one point in the film that the floor plan does change. Now, the question is, in what way does it change, and how does it change? Does it change when you're looking? Does it change right in front of you? Or does it change when you go into a different room? My theory is that yes, it changes when you go into different rooms. So like if you go into one room, if you're in these other rooms for long enough, the previous rooms will have changed, and this kind of plays into some ideas that are present within quantum mechanics. This idea that when the instrument isn't observing the particle, the electron, it's everywhere, right? It's bilocating, it's a wave form. But as soon as you turn the instrument on to measure, suddenly it goes its location and temporality is concretized. And I think this is something that is alluding I think this is something that's happening to the backrooms that's alluded to with some of the things in the film, which again just further plays to my main theme that it's referring to this this idea of subcorporeality, um, that it's just this extension of scientism's inability to just cross the threshold, and instead it becomes obsessed with the threshold because it doesn't want to concede ontological ground. Or it doesn't want to, not that it wants to concede ontological ground, but it doesn't want to consider ontological ground. And that scientism would be more than happy to continue to fester at the edge, to fester within the liminal space. And like Clark, it has decided that it wants to stay. It likes being there. It likes that it doesn't have to change. Because when you're in when you know in one of the things Clark's character does is he explores, and you can tell that he has become enamored with the prospects of exploring endlessly. And so yeah, so in the same way, that's the async and scientists, they fall into that same character pattern, which I would argue is, it is a narcissistic pattern of behavior. Like, oh no, we're not wrong. All of you are wrong. We're actually right. We actually have it right, and we're going to continue to explore into oblivion to make sure we keep that as the status quo. And then there's some, I would say that there's some nods to the consequences. There's some symbolic nods to the consequences of this mentality, of this paradigm, which is exemplified by the Backrooms and the entities that exist in the Backrooms. For example, the still lifes. There's a scene, spoilers, there's a scene where Clark explains that they're not actually people. They're just like furniture. They're just there, but almost as if they exist for no purpose. They don't even feel pain, and he basically demonstrates that he's perfectly happy with the concept of abusing these entities that he thinks he understands. And one of the themes of the Backrooms lore in general is that it is something that you cannot understand, because again, it's representative of a threshold, and it's the reason I believe that the Backrooms appear the way in which they do, with the wallpaper, the buzzing lights, and the carpet and everything, and the random ass furniture. All of this is a way to illustrate, to symbolize it's a way to express not just like it. I've heard some theories is like, oh, it's a metaphor for corporate culture. It's a metaphor. I've also heard, oh, it's a metaphor for artificial intelligence and this, that, and the other thing. Clearly, with the film, it's implying that it's a lot more than that. It's it seems to be it's it seems to be a way to express the meaninglessness. Because ultimately, when you reject ontology, you reject meaning, you reject purpose, you reject mission, you reject the incarnational nature of our existence. And there's no better exemplar of a rejection of living a liturgically real life than to encounter a non-Euclidean space governed by the strangeness of quantum mechanics that manifests as architecture designed for utility, robbed of its utility, in addition to it being like devoid of beauty. There's nothing of beauty there. I pointed this out to my wife. There are no churches. Have you watch all of the you can watch all the Kane Parsons Backrooms videos, but you could also watch all the other Backrooms videos. There are no churches. Take note of that. Whether that's a conscious decision, I don't know. It's certainly an unconscious decision, and I think that it speaks volumes. So you have to ask yourself, why are there no churches in the Backrooms? I don't claim to have an answer, but I think it's a question worth talking about and maybe adding to the lore. And I think that pretty much does it. That's pretty much everything that I really wanted to say about Backrooms. And that's why the videos that I have done on cinema, they're never it's never a movie review. I'm not concerned with how well crafted the story is. I'm concerned about the symbolism. I'm concerned about the themes, especially if they strike a chord with me as it relates to all the things we talk about on this channel and over at my Substack. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Click the bell icon so you are notified when the next live stream is scheduled. And please do all those things, especially if you feel that these videos bring good fruit into your life and to those of others. And if you would like the good fruit to spread, please make sure you share it. Don't forget that this is a viewer-supported live stream. Link below is to the Buy Me a Coffee. This is where you can go and chip in any of the tips that are sent to the Buy Me a Coffee. Within the next few months, I'm going to collect it and send it as a donation to the Metten Monastery in Bavaria, as a thank you to Father Michael, who has helped with my research on the origins and the veracity of the claims about the origins of the St. Benedict medal. Also, you can subscribe over at the Sophurgist. This is the Substack where I write essays. You can support through a $5 monthly tier or a $50 annual tier. This gives you access to audio versions that are not AI generated, as well as personal correspondence via snail mail. The P.O. Box address is still pending, and then you also will receive at the end of the year a print edition of all the previous year's essays and articles. If you feel like you want to make a substantial contribution to help make sure that I can afford the research materials with which I need to conduct the research that I do, And if you want to be the Medici to my Ficino, please consider joining the Societas Sophiergica. It's flexible, but so you can spend anywhere between $51 and $150 a year. And doing so turns you into a substantial patron that helps fund the work done at the Sophiergist. It goes a long way. It helps fund further research materials. And in addition to all of the benefits of a regular paid subscription, this gives you the added bonus of being able to participate in a monthly research session, exclusive to Societas members only. Minimum ideal requirement, but it's not a hard and fast rule, that you be a professed member of an apostolic church, either Catholic, Orthodox, at least, ideally that you are part of a tradition that has a liturgy, a bishopric that can trace its spiritual lineage back to the 12 apostles itself, and that you believe in the true and real presence of our Lord in the Eucharist. Otherwise, you may not get your money's worth, because that is the paradigm with which all of my research is conducted. And with that, my dear unknown friends, we will conclude with prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Thank you so much, and God bless.